You think they're hearing the music yet?
I don't know. It's intro music. You can't talk over intro music. Hey, how's it going?
All right. Well, the intro music's on, man. All right. Today is a pretty interesting day, man. I mean, this is a pretty freak weekend that happened, man. I don't know.
People are going to think that we made this stuff up just to build hype around your episode on Friday. But we've got like the screenshots to prove it.
I told Terrence, and like, dude, like nobody's gonna believe this.
Yeah.
I know, man. So anyway, so that gives you a little hype of what's coming today. But what are we gonna do first?
Let's give away some
all right, man.
Orders today. Nobody had anything in their cart.
No carts, man. All right. So, hey, for those of you who don't know, become Preferred Reefer. Hit the little Preferred Reefer link in the footer, and hey, you can get what's in your cart or what you bought for free. Travis Leon, man, you got $75.76 back.
Nice.
An 800-watt titanium heating element from Phoenix,
which we'll talk about today.
Yep. Some liquid iodine supplement from Brightwell Aquatics. Large coral frag discs from Ocean's Wonders. And it's total $75.76. Nice. Going back to your account, man, go buy some new.
I'll get that to you today.
Awesome. Do you really do it
as soon as we leave here? Well, before I leave the office, I go in, I credit them, and then I send everybody an email. Said, hey, go get your points, go spend them.
Bravo, man. Good job. All right. Robert Quinlan here, Cypress, Texas. You're getting you already got this stuff. Well, I don't know, when did you buy it?
Yeah, just recently,
10th.
the 10th.
Yeah, he's got
last
it.
week, last
Yep,
Monday.
He's got it, man.
You already got it.
All right, 1 cartridge refill of DI resin, 6-stage replacement RODI filter kit, a quarter gallon of bulk GFO, and some NO3 PO4X reducer from Red Sea, man. $122, 96 cents. Going back to your account, man, get something new.
Today. I'll get it in there today.
All right, so for those of you who don't know, go ahead, hit the Preferred Reefer link.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Well, it's everywhere.
Yep. No, it is all the time.
And then on top of that, it was Preferred Reefer. If you don't get drawn for this, once a month at the beginning of every month on a Saturday, we do like 10 times rewards points on a lot of things for community appreciation.
It's President's Day.
And then there's a sale today.
We're
not trying to pitch you anything. We just want to talk about monitors.
No. I don't know. It is President's Day sale, so go ahead and buy some if you want.
There you go.
We'll give it away next week. All right, so today we're going to go wrap up the conversation about monitoring that we had last week.
Yeah.
And kind of ties a little bit into even the live that we had before, which is kind of upgrade the chances of your success and stuff. Mm-hmm. We'll answer all kinds of questions today about it. I think hopefully this is like a heavy question day, man. I really like to answer a bunch of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest question that we had stemming from last Friday's video, even further back, like Mondays when we were talking about higher percentage, I think the question that we asked everywhere was, do you need a controller in order to have a successful reef tank?
The answer is no, man.
All over it, we answered no.
I mean, so that need word is super strong, man. And
True.
Why everybody gets all hung up on that stuff. And absolutely not, man. You know what? I don't really need a car to get to work. I can take a bus.
That's true.
But I'd prefer my car. I don't know. There's a variety of things in life that are that way. So in this case, man, I think what really start to think about is you start to think about can I set my tank up this year without any way to monitor it?
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. Especially I think brand new, man.
Yeah.
Things are probably not going to break.
Yeah.
No problem, man. It's once I send it 2, 3, 4 year mark, and one of the things that we were really hitting on is it's not really about control,
right?
That's a cool part of the whole thing. It's about absolutely monitoring first, so I know when my heater failed, I know when my return pump failed, I know when the power heads are all gummed up and need to be replaced or cleaned or whatever. I know pH or ORP, not so much ORP. Well, it's some degree ORP, but things are going out of whack.
I can tell you something. Well, I mean, it's the age of. It's kind of like the age of monitoring. Regardless, we monitor your credit, you monitor, your identity protection. These are things that you get alerted for. You want to know when somebody's going to try creating a credit card under my name. Why not save my tank?
I thought that was stupid when you said that, but now I think about it, it's absolutely right. Because if I'm monitoring my credit, man, which seems, I don't do that personally. I should, I should go get LifeLock or whatever it is right now.
Not a sponsor.
But the thing about it is it's most valuable when you know about it the sooner it happens.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'd prefer to know when they first try to go buy some diamonds or something on my credit card.
True.
Versus like when they've taken out a new home loan or something against my name. Like I'd like to know early on in the process, right?
Yeah.
And so the sooner you know, same thing with the tank. Like, I mean, one way or another, you're going to know your heater failed because, it could know just because you got an alert on your phone, or you could know because you came back and like things are
dying, dead, or
going that direction. Like one way or another, you're going to find out sooner or later. But it could be weeks, if it's down actually, or low, or it could be, hours if it was high.
Yeah.
Right.
There's something to be said about that first year too, getting by without needing. I mean, not needing, but maybe you don't need to monitor this and that, all brand new equipment. And something about that newer tank too. I know that first year that I had my first tank set up, my hands were always in that tank. So temperature thing, I could probably notice it. Something about a pump not working, I could probably notice it.
And that we were talking about like getting one of them little strips that you put on your tank.
Oh, the sticky-on ones?
Sticky temperature. At minimum that, man, it's like glance at it in a day. They're not like super accurate, but like if something's way off, man, I can see it now.
Yeah, true.
But the heart of the most interesting thing that happened this weekend, for sure. All right, and one of it I didn't really dawn on me immediately, but we had 2 tanks fail, and the Apex was involved in both of them. And so it'll be really interesting. One element of it, Apex saved us. Other element, Apex actually kind of failed, but it might even be our fault here. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and say
I'm pretty sure it is. It's probably my fault.
Yeah, I'll definitely blame you. Okay, so we'll get in here. We're talking about monitoring, and we're talking about saving the tank. So the 2 tanks that were involved were the Softy ULM and the 160 here, right? And so I'm going to start with the Softy ULM first, right?
That's pretty easy.
And so that one, out of nowhere, man, the alarm starts going off, and it says that it's taking 2,000 watts or 25,000 or 2,500 watts.
Yeah, it's dropped below the parameters that we set, or above the parameters that we set.
I don't know. Maybe you could throw up that sheet,
We've
man.
got a couple graphs of this one.
Yeah, I took a couple graphs of it. Is it that one? No.
ULM power.
ULM power. It's a big drop off. No, it's not that guy. Nope.
Return pump right there.
Return pump. There you go.
Here it is.
Boom. So out of nowhere, it was doing 2,500 watts, and then it just died.
Okay, right? So it was doing 2,500 watts, and then how long? Yeah.
I don't really know how long that was, but it definitely wasn't taking 2,500 watts, by the way.
No.
And the guy who takes care of the tank actually took the pump out to clean it, and it started sparking. So pump's dead, man. Probably started leaking water into it somewhere it shouldn't, or whatnot, and that's probably why you're getting that crazy reading. But now it's dead. Right, so in this case, man, we didn't really save the tank because we got 2 return pumps. So anybody remembers the ULM thing was all about redundancy, so you don't have to worry about the tank as much.
We added that second C. These are CJ 3.5s, I think, or 4.0s or something like that.
I think 3 or 3.5.
3s or 3.5s, yeah.
Yeah, so there's 2 of them in there, one going out of each overflow, and so when they failed, the other one kept going. Yeah. No problem, man. And so probably wouldn't even have noticed, man. Maybe the water level's a little lower or something in there, but it's going, and the life support's connected to the tank. Still, the pump's really the heart, lifeblood of the tank. For sure. So props to Terrence actually over at Neptune, because it was I don't know, man, years ago that he recommended me hey, man, I always have 2 return pumps, and when he said it immediately why would I have never done that before?
Why did we do the 160 with a single pump?
Yeah, I got all this equipment and it's connected with one pump. One pump I know for sure is going to fail or seize full of precipitate and stuff. It happens all the time.
Some point in time. Could be multi-years down the road. Could be in the case of the ULM. Could be within a year, right after a year. Those are about a year old.
Yeah, a little bit over a year probably. Yeah. So it's only been a year, man. One of them failed, but would have never known. But in this case, you know what? Tex got the alert, went in there, changed out the return pump, and we're good. And even knows to maintenance the other one now, right?
Yeah.
And catch that. And so, This time, man, the lifeblood or the heart that keeps all this life support connected to the tank, temperature, filtration, everything that's connected to the tank, failed, but like the heart kept going, and really, man, the tank never skipped a beat, really, man. It was like, replace it. So the combination of knowing that it failed and that we had a redundant solution in there, and by the way, with the C-Chase, 2 of the smaller pumps is about the same cost as one of the large ones. So like, it doesn't even come at like a cost. It's just a way, 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 way better way to do it. So
it worked out really well.
Yeah, I mean,
everything that we've preached about redundancy and backup and all this other stuff. Absolutely, there it was.
It didn't even dawn on me, actually, because this is Friday, so this is the day that the monitoring video went out, and like, I don't know, it's just like part of the normal thing. Like the apex goes off, tells you something's broke, you fix it. Didn't even dawn on me like, oh man, that'd be cool to talk about it Monday yet. Until I got some alerts at, what was it, Saturday night?
Saturday night. I think it was Saturday night. Yeah, about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. We were getting alerts on our phones.
Yeah, so it's 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I got to tell you, the desire to get, like, ready to go back to work and go check on alerts here is pretty low.
I live 40 minutes away, so even lower over here.
Yeah, 40 minutes, man. Yeah. Because half the time, it's something that probably could wait, but you just don't know. In this case, the temperature had dropped down to 75 degrees, right?
Yeah.
And like the alerts are going off, my phone's blowing up, the little push message thing's going off,
Yep.
And I call up Tex, and he's like, "Don't worry about it, man. I'm already on the way in there." I'm like, "Oh, you're the man." And luckily, Tex lives pretty close here. And so what had happened, man, is at first, man, like both the heaters failed. Not one, but
felt
2.
Like it, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, wow, man! Like right on the a day after we did this video, that both of them failed, man. Like, what are the chances?
We've got the graphs to prove the dates, that this absolutely happened. But
so that isn't the story, though. It isn't the heaters that failed, and there's a mix of failure that personal human being failure that Randy already decided to own, so I'm gonna let him have it.
Okay.
And I'll take my share.
Hey, so if you think about it, this is leading up to me being the root cause of the problem here. You've got the ULM tanks, all 3 of them. You've got the BRS 160. We've got the Red Sea tank in the studio. We've got the 750 XXL. Mm-hmm. And then when I had my the Apex hooked up to my desk, the office of the tank in the desk, I had that one too.
Yeah.
So at any given time, I could be notified or alerted by 5 or 6 different tanks.
Well, you got to set them all up right too, man.
And
There's
then
a lot of setup.
A lot of setup.
Okay, so this is what happened. The first thing is that I'm going to own this end of it. So what actually happened is the outlets on the Apex failed, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of them failed entirely, and the other one is probably just real close and on its way out, and maybe just failed now and is going to hit probably pretty soon. Okay, and so inside of those, for those who don't know, there is a relay inside there where it clicks on and off to turn the outlet on and off, and there's like a little moving part in there, and there's 2 little contacts that get dirty and stuff over time. And where I failed is I set the thing up to 1/10 of a degree on
tiny.
and off. That means it's probably turning off, 500 times a day.
Or so, yeah.
500 times a day. We decided
182,000 times a year.
182,000 times a year, I think we decided, which is like, it's been on for over 3 years, so like 3.5 years on there.
Yeah,
so
the episode was mid-year. Yeah, August 2015 when you did the heater episode for this. That's when those heaters first went in.
Yeah, so we're talking about 3.5 years, man. We're talking about these things turning on and off 1 million times.
Wow.
So the relay wore out. So, actually, man, cool. Like, the thing turned off 1 million times, man, I got my money out of it. Like, it worked.
For an average reefer, or for the more normal hysteresis where I can fluctuate maybe 2 degrees before toggling off and on the power, we're talking like
probably much longer.
Double, triple length of time, maybe?
Yeah, so here's the thing, man. You want to get more life out of it? Well, set it to 0.2 hysteresis before it turns on and off, or 0.3 or even 0.5, right? Because you're going to, turn them off, correspondingly less times, So you could probably get a decade out of it if you turn it to 0.3 instead
Yeah.
of 0.1. And just in terms of the amount of times those contacts come together and wear each other out and the moving part in there.
Yeah.
And so just for you to know, like they use relays in all of the outlets just because for most applications in aquaria, it's just a better option than a solid state option just because it works with low voltage items and just it works on everything in there, and it's just a better option than solid state in most cases. So the old Apex had like 2 relays and like 6 solid states, and they upgraded to all relays of all of them. So on our end, man, we wore those things out. So
What does it look like the graph? Let's bring up the graph.
Oh, let's bring up a graph. So heater
one
pump
fail.
Fail.
There we
Right. So, oddly enough, man, like this really goes to the point that like things fail at the same time, right? And so we talk about like redundancy, and I think we've talked about hard drives and all that kind of stuff. Like these things are come off the line at the exact same moment, right? And they were built the same tolerances in the same ways. And so if you use them the exact same, your hard drives fail at a similar time because they've been spinning the exact same way for the exact same revolutions. Your tail lights tend to break real similar times. The little filament's been turned on and on about the same amount of times. Not exactly. But in this one, you can see here it failed at like noon on the 17th.
Yeah, that flat line.
Yep. So the flat line in the end there. Heater left, I guess we would call it. We'll just call it heater 1 or something. That one failed, and that was the one that actually started dropping until we saw the alarm.
The next one, heat 1 normal, is what it looked like on a normal week basis.
Yeah.
You see how low the flat parts are. I mean, there are times when it's pulling 0 watts because it doesn't need to heat. You can see the difference between that
on and
the
off
gaps.
cycles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and you can see here, like also there's little midway points there at about 100 and some watts in there, and the Eheim heater actually kind of warms up. So we notice when you turn it on that it goes about halfway or whatnot, and then it goes up all the way. So the Eheim heater, just the way it's designed, kind of hits in both points as it's warming up. And so the Apex is also taking readings like every, I don't know what that is, but 5 minutes or so. It's not continuous monitoring.
Okay.
So it's just representative of how it's turning on and off. All right, so let's look at the one called Heat 2. Yeah, that one right there. Boom. All right, so the heater right, I guess we call it, or 2 or whatnot, that guy actually failed on the 12th. And you notice it's like, turning on every once in a while. And that's probably because the 2 contacts there are really dirty from arcing that million times. And, sometimes when it's triggered, it's actually coming together, but most times it's not,
All right.
And so that's probably why you see it working every now and then there.
Definitely. I mean, there's 3 days, there's like 2.5 days there where it just is off.
Yeah. So both of these things failed inside of, and by the way, none of the other outlets on the thing failed. It's these 2 that we turned on and off, a million times. So, here's the $1 million question, man. Like, why didn't we know on the 12th, man? So, yeah, maybe you can go back to us here. So, like, why didn't we know on the 12th? This thing has power monitoring, right? And, like, should allow us to let us know that, like, hey, man, heater, 2 or the right one failed on the 12th.
Most likely, I'm going to say that we had the email alarms or the alarms turned off because we were I was tired of getting them.
No, I think this one is actually not set up.
It's not.
Yeah.
Oh, for the wattage draw.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we had the temperature warning range set up, and that's how we originally found out that it dropped below our target. But the ambient room temperature is almost enough to keep that, steady or above our target,
yeah, maybe that high, but we didn't turn it on. I think the number one reason, I can't remember, it was 3.5 years ago. And sometimes things don't get circled back to. But when the Apex just came out, like if you remember,
2016,
it was actually like right when we were doing this series when a new Apex came out. They sent us when we set it up, and it did have power monitoring. But it was pretty wonky to set up, right? And so, like, we're jamming here, shooting videos, and just really trying to get it going. And we didn't. But now, if you can go and find the ULM power,
Power alarm.
Power alarm here.
Top right.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah. Now, man, like, you just like hit the task button.
It's a 4-step process. That's what it is. Click,
so
click,
we should have circled back, man, and done
Yeah.
this for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we would have known the moment that the heater failed. Like, so all those times where it was clicking on and sometimes was working and sometimes wasn't, you know, then in those times we would have known, because it would have said this heater should be taking, you know, 250 watts, and it's not, right? Yeah. And it would let us know immediately. But we didn't have it set up, man, so shame on us, right?
For
and,
sure.
You know, luckily the temperature thing caught it, and luckily, you know, really even more so, you know, we're using essentially the tank sitter option, because it ain't just going to Randy and myself, it's also going to Thomas, who takes care of the tanks, and he gets the alert and runs in to take care of it. So, you know, tank sitter options working, you know, in the sessions, there's more than one person looking at these tanks and taking care of them.
Well, so the wattage draw setup is valuable, not just in heaters for sure, because like so when you first, like, say you first plug in a pump to your Apex, your Energy Bar 832, right? It takes some time for it to build a history of what the operating wattage should be. But now, when you give it a week or so with everything plugged in, circle back to the wattage, and you can do things like your lights, and it'll tell you when, especially for us here, because we play with the lights now and then to film and do all this other stuff. So if it's outside of the wattage draw for the lights, it saved us on the Fuge before. The Fuge light wasn't turning on, and it sent us an alarm and said, hey, during this time it's supposed to be on and it's not drawing any wattage, and you can use it for
somebody turn everything. The intensity knob too far down.
So those, especially with those things with adjusting intensities like LED lights and stuff like that,
we since taped it.
Exactly. But if it's not operating within that window period of wattage, it can tell you if somebody's bumped it, messed with it, or it's just not working at all.
All right, so like really, man, I'll just kind of summarize, man. The ULM Softy tank, the Apex let us know the moment that the pump failed. We went and fixed it, replaced it. Tank never hit a beat, missed a beat. On the tank here, the tank definitely dropped to 76 degrees or 75 point something yesterday. We caught it, and it would have been on Saturday, man. So who knows what it would have dropped to by Sunday, and it would have been there all until today. You know, if we didn't have a monitor for it. And you know, that's really the thing, man, is like having that monitor when you're not around to let you know that it happened. And even at the most inconvenient times, at 10 o'clock on Saturday, the last thing any of us want to do is like go back to work.
But
you know, like
could have saved the day here.
So absolutely. And then behind that, man, like if you don't set the features up, man, they don't work either, right?
Yeah, true.
And so on our end, you know, like we're just trying to shoot an episode, like an hour-long episode on controllers and stuff 3 years ago, and man, we just didn't get to that one part of it, and for whatever reason, didn't cycle back. You know, all the other ones are, you know, power monitoring and whatnot. It just didn't circle back because it was just not on the list, man. So, you know, if it would have, we would have known about it right away. Luckily, the temp thing is going to catch it regardless, you know, so we just caught it one step past that, you know. But again, I think it's super interesting that both these things failed at the same time. Oh, one other thing, actually.
What's that?
So we got the heaters here.
Oh, yeah.
So, to some degree, the heaters actually did fail. So these are, for those of you who like want to reminisce, you know, in old world, these are two 300-watt Eheim heaters that we installed in the tank like 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
Yeah, so like if you want to reminisce on these things, you go ahead. But like we went and actually tested them to make sure that they're functioning, and they are functioning, and they do turn on to like 250 watts or whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, for those of you know, like most of these heaters that say 300 watts are not.
They're just a little bit under.
Yeah, most of them are under. But like in this case, you know, what we found was they actually like were not turning on anywhere near the degrees.
Oh, the set points. Yeah.
The set point is way, way, way off. So it was turning off it was turning on off at 74 degrees. So like this thing's just off by like, you know, almost 5 degrees, you know, from where we had it set. And so, you know, that's one of the things I've heard, and I can't guarantee this, but I've heard that about these types of heaters that rely on the bimetal thermostat is they work a long time sometimes, but the accuracy of the thermostat changes over time as that metal just starts to not be as accurate.
Right.
That may be one of the reasons why this is one of the few heaters that actually has the ability to calibrate it on the top.
Right.
It's like you probably need to, over time.
Over time, you readjust, yeah.
Well, I got to be honest, man. We got 3.5 years out of these things, and I'm going to throw them in the trash.
After your heater episode that we talked about what the life expectancy you got out of it and heating the tank of the BRS WWC series, like we should have replaced these once a year, right?
Yeah, so, sometimes also, like, you do as I say, not as I do kind of thing, I mean, we're all guilty of that. So, like, what I'm trying to give a lot of times is the best advice.
Right.
Like, hey, you asked me what was going to help my tank the most, and I'll give it to you. It doesn't mean that, like, I'm going to necessarily do it. And so what you've heard out of me a lot is throw your heaters away every year, right? And, well, clearly we didn't do that here. But, like, and that's even why, like, in those videos, and, like, I know nobody's going to do this, but this is the best advice to do. You know? Like, and I know it because I'm not doing it here, but like, it is the smartest thing to do.
We don't know when it's going to fail. That's the thing. I've seen Seachain pumps, like these Seachain pumps here, that have ran for multiple years and never failed. But this one of these ones kind of did it after a year. It could have been the same thing with these heaters too.
Well, so for what it's worth, in that last video we said actually throw them out somewhere around the warranty period, and these guys have a 3-year warranty, so I'm gonna throw them out. And you know what? They didn't actually fail, but when they're off by 5 degrees, I'm gonna call it fail enough. For my purposes, I get too much relying on these things to worry about, trying to get an extra year out or something out of them. That's just garbage for me. So there you go. So I got a couple of things though beyond that. Like I was talking to Terrence a little bit about the best way to set these things up. Like, do you use the Apex to control it, or to control the heater? Or to use the heater's controller to control the heater, and which one of these things backs each other up?
How well do you trust the thermostat built into a heater, if there is one?
So that's the question, right? And so what we got out of it is a couple of different things that we can share here, and that is, and then we're going to get to questions. And so the couple of things that we got to here was, if you have spent big bucks for like a neotherm heater where that thing is controlling the temperature down to like 1/100 of a degree almost, man, like maybe you want to rely on that, and you can use the internal thermostat on a really high quality, heater that you invested in, and then use the Apex to back it up. And in that case, the Apex is going to be just on, all the time,
right?
For the outlet, the relay will be turned on all the time, and then the heater itself is controlling it, and then you just set it to some point that if it ever goes over a certain degree, Apex turn it off, let me know. And there's an advantage there is, hey, now I'm protecting the, EB832,
right.
Which is, more expensive than the heater in some cases, and maybe not in the neotherm if you got 2 of them, but, it depends on what you bought. But the EB8s or 32 is expensive, thing. So I want to make sure I take care of it, and not turning those outlets on and off a million times is probably going to help me do that.
Right.
And so so set the controller up to set the heater to maintain the temperature for your tank, have it ideal, or you have a really good one, then back it up with your Apex. But other part about that's actually really nice is that in that case, if the heater's internal temperature controller actually fails on, you'll know, because the Apex will go off and tell you, right?
Oh, true.
And turn it off. And so in the other flip case, if you use the Apex to control the heater and the controller in the heater has failed on, you'd really never know. You won't know that that's happened because you're relying on the Apex first. And so you'll get alarms and stuff, and I can probably go open my phone and just manually turn the power off or whatnot. But if the temp probe in there failed, and they do. So it's a temp probe, man. They have a finite life.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you got it from. So sitting submerged in salt water, I think we probably replaced 3 of them in all my life here. Can you think of? I know we replaced one here.
That was the first and only time I remember replacing the temp probe.
If 3, maybe
Apex
only
on
one
here. Yeah.
But it's pretty rare. So, but they do fail, And so the flip side of this is, so say I buy some really cheap heaters, like I buy, like crappy heater. I mean, if you paid $30 for it, have about $30 worth of expectations out of it. Right? Like that's it was the cheapest heater I could buy. Well, it's probably the cheapest heater you could buy. So in that case, I maybe, and like if the temperature is going to go way out of whack, I may very well want to use the Apex to, control it, because the thermostat in that thing is just all over the place.
Right.
And I may, but I may actually even want to not do that. I just don't want to buy a $30 heater, to be honest. In most cases. So, these guys actually served us well, but those are really simple. For those of you who don't know, have you seen a video of Eheim heater before? Let's see if I can find it. It's hard to see in here. You gotta take this little thing off. But a lot of the heaters have a lot of electronics in them, you know, and so there will be a bunch of computer chips and all this stuff in there. In this guy here, all there is the heating coil and two little pieces of metal in there. One of them's got a magnet on it, and as the temperature changes, the piece of bimetal thermostat just kind of like moves closer, and then it snaps together.
Yeah.
Right. And just based on the temperature, it cools down. The metal wants to get apart, and it pulls apart. And so there's like really almost nothing to go wrong with this other than that metal just kind of wears out, and that arc.
Yeah.
And so the arc that's happening in there. Actually, this is a really good point.
And everything.
So one of the reasons that we use these at Eheims in the originally was it was dissimilar technologies.
Yeah. It was mechanical coupled with electric or electronic. So you had the redundancy of the mechanical relay in that specific heater on top of the Apex controlling that specific heater. So now you've got like two layers, two different types of technology working for each other.
So in reality, like even though the heaters didn't fail in this case, what we had done is set the temperature so high in these things so that only if it hit a really catastrophic temperature would they ever turn off. And so what happened is the two little metals are stuck together forever, right? Because the Apex is turning them off. So we're not wearing those metals out. So what happens every time the thing is arcing 300 watts, to it, what happens as soon as they get really close to each other, a little metal arc goes across the two little contacts, and sometimes they fuse together. Right? So like after a million times, man, one of two things will happen. They'll corrode and get so much stuff on the surface that it doesn't really connect anymore.
Right.
Or B, they fuse together. But in this case, man, we probably maximize the life of these things by essentially making them stuck together 100% of the time and then using the Apex to control it on and off. But what we did is then burn out the relay in the Apex. But we could have stopped that if we would have just said, you know what, hysteresis of like 0.3 instead of 1.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I really like having stability.
Well, it's your idea of a nice temperature chart is a swing of 1/10 of a degree.
It looks pretty that way.
It does look pretty. But we found out like maybe that's a little too much.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, like everybody knows it. And we even talk about it in the videos, like, hey, your stuff will last longer if you don't have it turn on and off as much. We've talked about that with power heads, like, your wave maker and whatnot. If you have it turn on and off every 15 seconds, it's actually not even creating a current in that case, like little weird pulses. But like in that essence, you're turning on millions of times a year, every 15 seconds. It's a ton of on-off cycles, so it's not going to last very long. So in this case, the heaters too. So this has just been like you experience it, and you're like, yep, I did the math. Holy cow, man, we got our money out of those relays.
Flipping the light switch 500 times a day. Like, how long until that light switch or the lights burn out?
Yeah, and that's one of those interesting things about an aquarium controller too. Is you're like, hey man, like that thing failed or didn't fail or whatever. And my expectation is like it's gonna last for eons. Like I'm gonna like be able to will this to my kids or something. Like it's not reasonable.
Nah.
Everything has a lifespan to it. The fact that it can tell me the moment that it broke, awesome. And a power bar ain't gonna do that. And so a couple outlets on a power bar could go at any moment too, or the whole thing really. So I don't know, man. The whole thing is. It was a really eye opener for me.
Well, it's like we were said at the beginning, like we said in the opening, like people aren't going to believe that this stuff happened this weekend, right after the Friday episode.
Well,
And
my
there
first
it
thing
goes.
was specifically, oh my gosh, the Apex saved the 160 from both heater failures. Like nobody's ever going to believe that, and that wasn't really the case in this case. Actually, it was
Right.
the two outlets on an Apex failed, but it told us, right? And so it's kind of a mixed story, and what we learned from it, share with you guys. Make sure you're setting up your stuff to be able to get the most life out of it. Set it up in a way that gives you, like if you haven't set up the power monitor on your Apex, raise your hand right now, because you're probably more than you thought. There's so many features on the Apex that I just didn't get around to setting up every last thing on all of them.
There's a lot of different parameters. There's probe alarm and parameters, and power usage alarm parameters, and temperature, and all kinds.
There's
of
so
stuff.
many, man. So the reality is hey, use our experience to go out and set the things up immediately, right? I get home, man, I'm gonna put a rubber band on my finger. All right, so answer some questions, man.
Okay, what do we got?
You pick one.
Isn't a heater thermostat a controller?
Yes, absolutely.
Built in.
It's a standalone controller.
Sometimes tied together. So, if I've got, it's standalone, but sometimes it's built into the head of the heater. Sometimes it's external from the heater probe, and sometimes there's none at all.
Mm-hmm. So. It absolutely is, and so people think about those those Phoenix titanium heaters.
Just
right?
the element.
Just the element.
Yeah.
It is not designed to be used plugged into an Apex or something like that. It's designed to be plugged into a temperature controller, and if you want redundancy, plug it into the temperature controller in the Apex.
Okay.
And one of the things, man, you just don't think about a lot is. The only difference between a heater, with a controller, and a temperature controller and a heater, is that one's hardwired in.
Right.
Right. And so, otherwise, it'd be different. Like this guy right here. So, if I went and bought a Phoenix temperature controller, and then or a Phoenix just a titanium
just heating
heater,
element, right?
Plugged it into something like the Inkbird or whatnot. Well, really, it's the same thing as just buying a heater with a controller. Except
if one fails, I can just replace the one that failed.
It's absolutely
Yeah.
the heating element itself, often lasts a really long time. So I can just replace the controller that may have failed.
Right.
And most likely thing that failed on the controller, by the way, is probably the temp probe. And so some of these things you can actually replace the temp probe.
Oh yeah.
Is that easy just to go ahead and replace the part that may have failed instead of the whole thing. And so by keeping them separate, actually there's a whole lot of advantages. One of the things is with a lot of those heaters, the temperature probe is actually built into the head of the thing. Right?
Yeah, so it's trying to read around the heat that it's giving off itself.
Yeah, it's like heating itself up, heating its own temp probe up. In this case, with an external controller, you can go ahead and put the probe somewhere totally different than the heater itself. So yeah, absolutely, man. So it is a standalone temperature controller that's built into most heaters.
Yep.
It's just people don't think about it that way. They think about it as a heater, but it's not. It's a temperature controller.
Well, another point too is you think of the cost of a heater that's got one built in, or the cost of separating them out, or the cost of adding the separated ones to the Apex. And you pay $30, like you said, at $30 for a $30 heater that has its own built-in thermostat. You can probably expect the parts in the thermostat, the built-in heater, to be with $30. All $30.
3 levels of distribution by the time it got here.
So $5 parts in this heater.
The whole thing, man. The packaging costs more than the thermostat. Yeah. So. You got to have realistic expectations. So you buy the heater itself, you get a good one, it's $30 or whatnot, and then you get a controller by itself, it's $30. Costs twice as much, but the solution is much better.
Yeah, true.
Right? All right, what's the next one?
Would smart plugs be a viable alternative to a controller?
So are smart plugs like those things from Auto Aqua? Or?
A couple different ones. I mean, you have their programmable outlet ones, and you can tell them to do different things. There is the smart temp controller by Auto Aqua that you plug into the wall, you plug the heater into the back of it, and then it has a probe that goes in your tank. But you can't change the parameters of when it's going to shut the outlet off on that one. outside of that, you would have to have a way. I would think you'd have to have a way if you're just going to use a Bluetooth or like a Wi-Fi type of outlet that I can access from anywhere. You have to have a way to tell that the temperature has changed, and then shut the outlet off manually.
Well, I think there's a bunch of those things out there that are actually specific to their purpose.
Yeah.
You know, smart outlet, and like I think that they're absolutely viable little options for controlling, you know, some element of your tank, you know. Like essentially some of them are pH controlled outlets, and
Right,
some of them
right.
are temperature or time, or, you know, timer is a controller.
Well,
you know?
some of them. Well, you built-in timer on your phone with the app. I mean, if I have a house full of smart controllers or smart outlets, and I connect it to my Alexa, and I don't have an aquarium controller, a full out one, but I know I want to shut my return pump and my skimmer off, and say I've got a smart outlet, I can just tell Alexa to shut them off.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really that.
I mean, you're hitting the amount of reefers that'll actually set them all up like that, but
Yes, the answer is kind of. No, the answer is most people wouldn't do it that way. So I mean, it's kind of like can you have a tank without a controller? Absolutely. Double so if like an $800 controller ain't in your budget.
True.
Like, no, then I'm gonna watch the thing closer, and I'm gonna be successful. If I'm a gear junkie and I have $800 laying around, and my spouse isn't going to notice when I don't buy her laundry or her washer and dryer for her, then yeah, man, I'm going to buy it. But you know, outside of that, man, you know, it really goes either way.
Yeah.
So what else we got here, man? Does the Apex EL have wattage monitoring? Yeah.
Yes.
It does. So the only thing different there is you don't have 0 to 10 volt things, which are going to like control your, you know, some controllable pumps and
lights
and some lights,
dimmable lights, 0 to 10 volt. Yeah.
Like not a lot of things use that. You know, that's not the most common thing on there. ORP, which most people don't really know how to use properly anyway, it does give some indications into things, but like to really understand how to use ORP, and it doesn't have salinity. And the salinity is probably the most valuable of those things, but it isn't like absolutely required, because most of the things that affect salinity you'll catch probably somewhere else with a water level
Right.
or sensor or something. But yeah, it doesn't have those three things. Otherwise, it has all the other stuff, including the power monitoring. All right. What else we got here?
Can I use BRS probes on the Apex setup? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
The pH probes are standard B and C connectors, which the Apex full, the full version of the Apex has two. One they have listed for ORP, but you can change it over to pH if you want to, for like dual pH. And then there's another one just for pH. And then we also have we have the lab grade pH probes. That's pretty much it. We have an ORP probe too, don't we?
Yeah, they have the ORP and the single and dual junction for both pH and
Yeah.
ORP. And so, like, I don't know where Apex gets their probes from or whatnot. You know, so I can't really say anything about them other than people seem to be happy with them. But for us, you know, when we decided to sell a BRS pH probe, you know, like similar to like the, you know, path we went with, you know, pharma chemicals and stuff. Like I didn't want like the cheapest probe that you could find, you know, like, I mean, I'd go to Alibaba and find that if you want, but, you know, like I wanted the best probe that you could find. So we went out and got, you know, a probe that has a properly protected B and C connector. It uses the Pellon strip as the junction. There's two junctions. There's like a silicone, the junction's like made out, or not junction, but the seals are silicone. And the thing is, you know, properly made here in the United States. You know, so, you know, there aren't, like when you make scientific gear in the United States, it's because you want to have a different kind of standard. So, you know, I can't tell you, you know, that I can't make any claims as to what Neptune's probes are doing. I just know for ourselves, man, I wanted the best, and I wanted them at an affordable price and skip a lot of the, you know, markups along the way. And so you can absolutely use those. You can use the BH probes on everything, and that's what we use here.
Yeah.
All right. Can you explain ORP correctly? That's actually over here. You just went over it. Yeah, I'll explain just a little bit. Like, not enough for you to be able to use it, but you know, so people often think of ORP as like, you know, cleanliness of water, which it really isn't.
Of organics?
Yeah, like it's I think of it as how much organics or whatnot is in the water. And what it, like the best way that I've heard it described is like it's the balance between the amount of oxidants in the water, which are like little cleaners essentially, and organics in the water. Like so, like the oxidative power of the water. So the problem is like if you think about it, it's the ratio of these things essentially. So you think about it as cleanliness of the water. Well, you might have like 100 dirty things in the tank and 100 oxidants, and so your ORP would be like 100, let's say.
Right.
I might have 1,000 organics in the tank and 1,000 oxidants, and it still gives
Still the
100
same reader.
as a
Yeah,
ratio,
reader.
right?
Okay.
And so like my tank is way, way, way dirtier. I just happen to have a lot of oxidants in the water as well, and so it isn't really a representative of that. And like it'll give you a window kind of in that, especially on your own tank. So on your own tank, as you make changes, it will give you a window. But like I see people, say, hey, I'm going to use the X salt or something. I did a water change and my ORP dropped. Does that mean that salt was dirty? No, it really could have meant like that you just stirred up a whole bunch of crap in your tank when you did the water change, which is likely. It could also mean that the new salt that you use, like maybe had less oxidants in it. Not that it was dirty; it's just less oxidants in the water, right?
Yeah.
So like it really doesn't. You can't use it to do that kind of thing. One of the things that like I would say, people use it to make sure you don't dose too much ozone.
Ozone, yeah.
Right, so I don't oxidize the hell out of my water.
Right.
So it's used for ozone a lot, and then a little bit. You could use it as a warning point for something really big died in the tank.
Yeah.
Right, but it's rotting at this point. So it's adding a lot of oxidants or a lot of organics to the tank.
Like that big tang that you lost and you don't know where it went. Did it jump out? Is it still in the tank?
It's been rotten there for days. Yeah. And so it started. In that case, it's starting to creep up, and you may not even know. So with the biggest thing I think you could see it with is. Like my son went up to the tank and decided if the fish like a little food, I bet you like a lot. And so they dumped the whole thing into the thing, and like, now the ORP is gonna plummet. Tell me my kid just dumped a whole can of fish food in there. But like if you're trying to monitor water, quality, I think there's a window into it. But don't treat it like it is a very clear window.
Yeah.
More or less tells you the light's on.
Terrence is posting here in the Facebook. If you guys are on Facebook, he had a talk with Craig Bingham.
There we go.
Bingman, PhD on ORP.
Yeah, dude. So Terrence's is about as nerdy as they get. Like in a way that I call him constantly, and we have the nerdiest conversations you could ever have. So like, if Terrence is talking about that thing and you're interested in ORP, go watch it, man, because he'll probably answer everything you possibly ever want to know about it, and probably in a way that the average person can understand it. Because there's a lot of articles out there, but they get pretty complex and kind of require a level of science knowledge that a lot of people don't have. All right, what's another one here?
Let's see.
I got the Apex and the ATO. How many more water sensors can I connect? Isn't it 2 more?
Where? So if you're running the ATK, it takes.
That's the fourth one up there. Micah.
The Apex and the ATO. How many more water sensors? Yeah, if you have the ATK, which has the FMM, which has 4 sensor ports, it takes 2 sensor ports of the FMM for the ATK to run the high and the low, and then it leaves you with 2 that you can put. You can either put optical sensors in, which a lot of people probably do, so that you can go high waters in the sump or low water in the sump or something like that.
Things are going totally awry.
Yeah, or you can even put like flow meters and stuff in those sensor ports too.
You can also put leak detectors,
and leak detectors, which is actually probably the more valuable one for me personally.
Yeah, like hey, this is auto top up, man. I'm like trying to not put too much water in here. Like there's the number one indication I put too much water in is water's pouring over the sides.
Yeah.
So like that, I'd call the leak detector ports on there like catastrophic failure, right? And so the fact that it is capable of giving you actual monitoring the water levels as well as that is pretty cool. It's something that I don't think any other controller or auto top off out there does.
Yeah, I like it.
All right, what's another one?
Would you use 2 different return pumps to avoid common mode failure, or just rely on monitor for redundancy? I think we learned this one this weekend.
Mode failure. I will tell you, like, anytime that it is reasonable, I will do 2 return pumps for sure. And so I'll give you an example of unreasonable. It was in the XXL 750
with a single return line.
It's got one return line. It's metric plumbed.
It's pre-manufactured, so it's not like you're drilling this thing. It's not like you're adding your own. Yeah.
And like I could, but like I don't want to.
Yeah.
You know, and so in that case, I wanted to use the plumbing that's there. I also didn't want to put plumbing in the back as part of the way that. If I have an internal overflow, that means I can, butt the tank pretty close up to the wall, which aesthetically is pleasing.
Right.
I'm okay with having it apart, but like in that case, if I'm going to move it away from the wall, I want an external overflow like a Ghost or a Reef Synergy one.
The
shadow. Yeah. So like I want one of those guys so that like the overflow is really minimal in the tank. Mm-hmm. But if the overflow is already in there, I'm going to push it up against the wall, and I don't want to go putting new overflows in. So in that case, our new return spouts, in the sides.
Yeah. Well, if you're buying, if it already has the plumbing into it, you don't know if they've tempered the panels and like you can't even drill it or not.
No, in the back.
So it might not even be worth trying to drill
find
it.
Out. I mean, you can find out pretty easy.
Well, then fluid dynamics, trying to figure out how the relationship between one pump pushing another pump, or do you push one pump to feed the other pump? Do you put check valves on top of it?
Yeah. So I just wouldn't do it, man. Like in that case, like I chose not to, and I like desperately want to, right?
Yeah.
And instead, I bought a really expensive pump that I rely on to keep the things going.
Yeah.
But like. Outside of that, I would try to use 2 pumps, return pumps, always. Any time I could use 2, I would. Again, in many, many cases, 2 small ones cost the same as 1 big one.
Yeah.
So, like, it really isn't about money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some plumbing fittings and stuff, but, like, it's about redundancy. Again, like, if I could have like a spare heart for like when this one goes, I'd take it every day. Like
you're on a list for a long time.
Well, hey man, you got 2 kidneys. It was awesome. Like one goes, you still have another one. Like I'll take redundant stuff any day of the week. And in this case, like it's connecting all the filtration, often the temperature, the filtration, like everything, man. A little bit of the flow, whatever, between these 2 things. Like I don't want them to be separated just because one pump got gunged up.
Well, in most cases, like say for example the ULM Softy tank, those are pretty small pumps, but a single one, even though we're running 2, and they're fixed, so they're AC pumps, so they're at fixed flow rates, and it's circulating the water at a certain turnover rate. One of those alone is enough flow to just at least keep the temperature of the main display and maintain temperature. It may not be the most adequate for contact time with filtration or whatever, however that balance is, whether you're growing a refugium or all this other stuff.
Yep.
But at minimum, when and if one fails, you can at least keep the tank warm and oxygenated. So.
Yeah, in that case, but I definitely would use check valves, so that when one of them fails, the water isn't just dumping back down the other one,
Yeah, true.
And like the check valve isn't there like to, prevent all water. So like it doesn't even need to seal perfectly. It just needs to not let most of the water back down. So using the little flopper guys, man, is fine.
Okay.
And really anything just to make sure that if it failed, it closes off most of the way, when one fails. Mm-hmm. All right. So what else we got here? Can Apex be used for an auto water change system? Absolutely, with the dose here.
Yeah.
So we talk about that a lot. So I'm surprised. But yeah, like that's the number one way. I when I say number one, I'm going to say I think it's the best way to do an auto water change. And I don't use the word best like ever because like best just means so many things to so many different people.
Yeah.
But in this case, if you own an Apex or you're going to consider buying one, like this is the one I would use. It's just super easy. You use a little task thing, and it's like 4 buttons to set up. It is reliable. It tells you when it's failed. It is just.
Well, Well, I think the solutions prior to the dose was either an elaborate system of float switches or optical switches, breakout box, different pumps, hoping that the pumps just happen to pump the same amount at the same time. Some elaborate programming, liter meters, really expensive, dosing pumps that have, volumizers built into them and stuff. It got really complicated, and
you just end up trusting too many things.
Yeah,
so
true.
some of them fill up a gallon bucket and then empty one and fill one and empty one and fill one, whatever. It's all kinds of float switches and stuff on it. Some of them are using flow meters or trusting that this pump is going to go a controlled rate or whatnot. And all this stuff, man, is pretty wonky, And so the dosing pump head, man, it spins at the same rate. You calibrate it. It pinches off the same amount of water. They're designed for accuracy. The motor in the back of the dose, you take the thing off. Most of them, you can look at it and say, this would look like a 10-cent motor from the hobby store. I can get these at Axeman or something. And these guys are big, blocks that are clearly designed for its purpose. So, absolutely. The answer is yes. You could definitely use it for auto water change system, and if you're going to do it and you have an Apex, I'd recommend it highly.
Yep. How often do you recalibrate your probes on the Apex? I mean, for me, the solutions are so cheap at probably less than $1 or about $1 per solution. I don't. 4 times or 4 times a year, quarterly, probably minimum. That's pretty easy. Maybe once a month even, just because it's literally open up the task function, click on calibrate the probe, and then go through the series of click, check, let it settle, click, check, let it settle, put it back in, you're good to go. Verify, you're good.
Yeah. So one of the things I think people miss a lot is actually so you could do it every month, a quarter, or year or whatever that you want to do it on. I think one of the best ways is to change it when you need it. Calibrate it when it's needed. It's something happened.
Oh, the solution's so cheap that I can just dip my probe in it and verify that it's 7, and I don't need to go any further.
What is it, $1?
It's 99 cents for some of them.
$1. Yeah. So go get the 7.1, or you don't even need to do both, man. Just pick one, because this isn't a super precise thing. The 10.1 or the 0.01. Dip it in there, and if it reads the number that's in there, leave it alone. And you're more likely to mess things up recalibrating than you are fixing a probe that's clearly reading the solution right.
Yeah. Okay. True.
So dip it and find
cheap.
out.
Super cheap.
So I don't. In this case, I don't think it's when people say when to calibrate the probe. It's not the dollar package that you have to use. It's the time.
There's some time to it.
It's a 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. And so just if it's accurate, why waste the time?
That's done.
Yeah.
Yep.
Question. I was told that I can use my ORP probe for a second pH probe for my calcium reactor. And I assume that's related to an Apex.
Yep.
And the answer is yes.
It's absolutely true.
Now you do
you do have to go into the Terrence will correct me here. It's not the modules page, but it's the outlets page or something like that. But you have to turn the ORP outlet off inside of the programming. You disable it, and then you go into, it's called a pH number 2, and that one already comes out of the box disabled. You enable that one, and now they're both reading pH.
So the answer is, I believe that yes, you absolutely can. You just need to switch it to
from ORP to pH. Yep.
All right. What else we got?
That's a good aspiration.
We got Reef Keeper. Wait, Reef Keeper is dead, so no more updates can be made to the software. Yeah. That also means there's no more temp probes, which is the biggest issue out there. So the guy asked here the other day, where you get one, and I made Jason go in the back and scavenge all the ones we had and send them to him.
We've got a small stockpile still in the warehouse, so just in case for some parts. But now everybody knows.
Those stockpile, get them while they're hot.
Yeah.
Because when they're gone, they're gone. So the temp probe is the biggest one. When that thing's gone,
there's
gone.
There's no more.
No more. And the pH probes and stuff, you can use anybody's stuff. So pH or P, whatever. They had a salinity thing. I don't think it worked that good.
No.
So that's gone, but it's probably gone when it came out.
Yeah.
So the Reef Keeper, man, I don't know. I mean, I noticed somebody put it up here today.
Yeah.
And
we found value in them still for some testing and stuff, but
it's so easy, man. I wish honestly, man, I really wish it was still around because like it was the controller. It never got to your phone or did all the cool monitoring stuff that the Apex does. But like
low cost.
Yeah, what the small one costs $120.
Yeah.
It was a heater controller, had 4 outlets.
Yeah.
Like, it was nice, man. Like, and it was just like, man, I'm pretty certain that like I could train anybody to use this thing inside of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It was so simple. Mm-hmm. So never. I think it's gone though for good, but it's still here, I guess, reminding us of the older years. So I don't know. All right. Hopefully, though, I mean, if Terrence is watching, which I think he is, maybe he'll come out with something in that price range.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Like I know they're like trying to do the best job they can on a variety of things. They're trying to bring home all kinds of things at once. So they're definitely focusing on the Trident right now. But maybe down the road there'll be an opportunity to bring like a scaled down version like that's as simple as this thing. Or not. It's probably the same format as Fusion, which is pretty close, and but like in a similar price point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we'll see. Particularly it would be nice if you got a little scaled down one and you could use it with things like this. So the auto water change that you guys talking about doesn't cost $800 plus $300.
Yeah, right.
Like $200 plus $300. I don't know. All right. Honestly though, I tend to use the Senai to monitor more than either of the two. There you go. So the Senai, man, that's an interesting one. So
yeah, when you couple it with the web server and everything, and you couple it to a computer, or you get the Wi-Fi web server, which will connect it to your email, and it'll tell you, it's told. I think when we had it set up here, it told you that the water level was low, and we came in the weekend, and sure, the ATO got shut off. But yeah, that's basically that's all there is to it, though. It's a monitor.
Yeah, so
there's no control or anything, but.
This is what I say about it. Like, there's a lot of people that will say, "Oh, this is really cool," and there's a lot of people that'll be disappointed by it. And so this is the difference, like scale of the people, man. So if you buy the little $200 one, it needs to be plugged into a computer to work, to be able to send you the monitoring and whatnot, right? And not everybody has a computer next to their tank. I mean, you can get a pretty long, boosted USB cable, and it'll work just fine that way. And at $200, man, it will. The cool thing about it is for sure that it's this simple. Is you log into the thing, put your name and your email address and your phone number in there, and you're done.
Yeah.
Right. It will now tell you about ammonia issues. It will tell you about water level issues. It'll tell you about pH issues, temperature issues, which are the big ones. Like I know now immediately, and like if you're not really like a big technologically enabled person, like. At least you could put your phone number in a field and hit send. You got this, man. That's all you needed to do.
Yeah.
And specifically, if you use their web server thing, which is another $200, but that's where it starts to like kind of get at $400. Would I rather have that, or would I rather have an Apex EL, which is right close there?
And 8 outlets I can control, Fusion from anywhere in the world, phone.
Most people are going to go Apex at that point, right? The one difference, man, I guess I'd say is, say I bought a Senai, and the primary reason I bought the Senai is because I wanted a par meter, right? Okay, now I'm already into this for $200, right? And I bought the Senai, a par meter is $200, like no matter how you cut it, right? So like all of them out there are going to be in that price range, so I might as well get this one. And so if I got that one, I'm already in it for $200. Well, for $200 more, now I can add all those monitoring things, and I don't have to worry about hooking it up to a computer or whatnot anymore. So if you're already investing in it, then it starts to make a lot more sense. One of the things, too, is it does have little tabs that you need to replace.
Oh, yeah, every 30 days. Yeah.
Every 30 days you got to replace a tab.
Slide,
so part of your maintenance. I don't know what they cost, $10 or something like that, 12 maybe.
Yeah, something.
I don't know. But, most people don't like anything you have to replace. But you have to replace your pH probes, you have to calibrate your pH probes, like it's all kinds of stuff that you're doing anyway. Like it's no different than that. But the one oddball that they really claim to fame, I guess, is that ammonia monitoring. And I think a lot of people just say like ammonia monitoring is like of no value because like I would never test for it.
Yeah.
And the reality is that I'd never test for ammonia unless I thought something catastrophically had gone wrong.
And you wouldn't know.
I wouldn't know, like because the tank, man, like it's processing ammonia in real time. So it's like what it's best at, after it's robust. So, the thing is though, we don't know that to be true because nobody monitors ammonia really.
True.
Ammonia, people have random crashes all the time. Things die all the time, and you don't know why.
You don't know why.
Like fish turned up, upside down, man. You don't know why.
Source water.
So it could be that, could be not. But I will tell you for sure, ammonia spike. Definitely indication something's going really wrong with your tank, man. Yeah, something's dying, man, or your filtration, something disrupted it. Like, maybe a power outage happened that, like say you use like a sand or a trickle filter or whatever. Power outage goes for a couple hours, and then all that stuff dries out. Bacteria's gone, filtration's gone. Now it's telling you do something about it.
Somebody topped off your ATO with tap water, maybe with high ammonia.
Or maybe chloramine water, whatever. Yeah, definitely that'd be interesting. I never thought about using that thing to monitor chloramines because it might. Because chloramines contain ammonia. So I don't know. Senna's kind of a weird, oddball little product, man. Like backs a bunch of weird stuff together. Some people really love it. Some people are like, oh man, I didn't realize it needs to be plugged into something. It doesn't really control anything. But I don't think it's really for that person. I think it's for the person that does not want to configure anything. They just want to go plug it in and put their email address in there, and now be notified when something's wrong.
Yeah, true.
Right? So for that person, it's awesome. All right, what else we got in here?
Yeah, let's see.
All right, well, 405, man. We got. There's a bunch of questions here. We'll answer 3 more. Call it a day.
Okay.
All right.
Would a controller be the first purchase, or would it be one of the last things you purchased?
I'll let you go first.
I've used them before. It wasn't the first thing I purchased, that's for sure, because I was just learning about the hobby, just getting into it. So I knew those things existed, but it wasn't in my budget either. I'm just getting my toes wet in the hobby, But once I got deep into the hobby, and being a tech junkie myself, it was inevitable that I was going to get one. Would it be now that I know what it can do and everything, would it be one of the first things I'd purchase? Probably still not. I don't think so. If I was setting up a new tank at home, I have access to used Apexes, and I have access to get an Apex, from here. But I don't know if I would put one in right off the bat. With the 4-month cycle, and just knowing that I'm comfortable now in my hobby, in my experience in the hobby, that where patience I can have, and I don't need my tank to look Insta-Tank in my house. And I don't feel like the urge to turn it into instant tank. I can let that thing sit for months on end and not be worried about whether or not the tank's temp is fluctuating and all that. When I start investing money in putting things in the tank, my corals and my fish, then I'm going to start investing money in monitoring and controlling stuff.
So does the Apex come before or after the $3,000 in corals you're going to buy?
Oh, before that, but after everything else in the tank.
Yeah, so before or after? So this is 100% a budget question, right?
Yeah, true.
Because if you're lucky enough to say, hey, I want to set up a tank from ground zero, and I got
an Apex.
I got $5,000 to do it. Well then just put it on in the beginning, man. But that's not most people. So, we're gonna buy a tank, and we're gonna buy a sump, and we're gonna buy some heaters and stuff. And in reality, most of this stuff is going to last at least a year or two, right? And then it's about that point where things start to fail more often, right? And having monitoring in place. And so as I'm budgeting money for this tank, I mean, it's really hard for me to, because I know I'm going to buy the thing anyway.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for me to say not buy it from the beginning, but I don't need it from the beginning. Here's the downside, though. Man, wiring these things is a total pain in the butt, especially safely, right?
Yeah.
So you got proper drip loops and stuff, and so if I can, set up, set up all the powering, the power bars, and all the electrical and everything in the beginning, and make it safe from the beginning is really easy because there's no water in the tank. I can mount everything proper. Later on, undoing all of the stuff in there and then trying to install the Apex later is some work, man, right? Yeah. I'm willing to do it, but if I had the $800 laying around or the $500 for the EL, I just do it in the beginning because it's so much easier. and I get the value from the beginning. And the reality is like, yeah, man, a lot of this stuff isn't going to fail for a year or two, but there's so many things, man. Like, how many times have you turned something off on the aquarium, thought you were going to come back and turn it on, and never did?
Almost every time I touch it.
I mean, like, I would say I'm so spacey, man, that like 75% of the time that like, this time I'm gonna come back here and I'm gonna turn this thing back on. I'm just too busy, man. Like, I get called here like 8 billion ways. Somebody's trying to put out some fire somewhere.
Even our non-hobbyists, like Dave, who runs the lights, so he'll change the lights. Now he puts his car keys on the light control, so you can't go anywhere unless you remember it.
I make them too, because like here, like we turn the lights down so the whole tank doesn't like blow out the whole film, scenery here, and like we have to manually adjust it to that. And one of the things is it's going to stay there for forever now, right? Until somebody changes it back to the cycle that it's supposed to be at. And that happened, and the thing is nobody's here at midnight to say, hey man, the lights are on, they shouldn't be. And the controller's not telling you that either, because we changed the control on it, you know? And so like in that instance, man, like go and put your keys on there, but controller even better, man. Turn the things on and off. You can use a feed mode, whatnot.
To another point too, would it be the first purchase or one of the last things? There is a learning curve to some of these controllers.
That's true.
So, I mean, if I've got more time in the beginning where I flipping switches and stuff and I accidentally leave something on in my tank, and it's that first 4 months when nothing's really happening in my tank anyway. I mean, I can learn then not to do that, or put things in place or controls in place, or alerts that said, hey, you left your light on, dummy. And then get that out of the way and learn those lessons before I've already got it stocked with $3,000 worth of corals and fish.
Absolutely. I guess I relate that too, man, because like a lot of the controllers don't have like a ton of stuff, that goes with them. The Apex got so much stuff now that like plug into it.
Yeah.
Like, what if I decide from the day one, man, I don't want to do water rate changes? Like, I don't even know what our changes are yet.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I saw a guy hauling around buckets. I don't like that. So like, hey man, so you can do the auto water change in the beginning. I can set up leaks and stuff in the beginning. Like, like again, I mean, we're talking about like unlimited budget there again, but like, hey, it's a hobby, man. Like, I tell people all the time, they're like, like, how much did you spend on the tank? And I tell them that, like, how would you do that? And I'm like, yeah, dude, but like, look, man, you're driving a Lexus, and so the difference between your Lexus and the Toyota, man, is like, a little bit of plush, but you spent $20,000 on it.
Yeah.
So like, you wanted plush, man, I wanted aquarium. Like whatever, dude. So we all like different things. If you bought like a $320,000 house and somebody else bought a $300,000 house, I'm not like laughing at you about it. Like, you just wanted an extra bedroom. Or whatever, man. I don't know, nicer kitchen or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, like, it's definitely about how much money you're going to spend on the thing and when. So, I'll just leave it there. But in the beginning, it would be nice. It's easier to do in the beginning than it is later, but it's budget.
Yeah.
All right. So, what else do we got here?
Could you use a non-Apex dosing pump for an auto water change? There's system. The Reef. So the forums, back before like the dose was being used for auto water changes, there's a bunch of forums and posts out there of these people making elaborate, auto water change systems with float switches and optical sensors and pumps and run times and all this other stuff. It can be done. It's just, for the 7 clicks it takes to turn this thing into an auto water change.
Yeah, so the thing you're going to need is a high volume pump, or a pump that's capable of running for a long time. Like most of the pumps that are for the aquarium industry are designed to dose like 200 milliliters a day.
Yeah, that's it.
Like
intermittent, not even like steady on.
Yeah, and so even then they're going to last 2 years, right? If I want to do a gallon, man, like it's gonna last 3 months, like so, and it's gonna do poorly at it even in that 3 months. So you can go get a couple of dosing pumps that you feel are accurate and capable of doing the load that you want, but don't be surprised when they get pretty expensive. Like, so I was just thinking, like, what couldn't you use those FX STP pumps from Camor?
Oh yeah,
those calibratable, they're continuous duty pumps, Yep, but they're $350 a piece, right?
Each.
Yeah, so I'd be $700 into that solution instead. So Apex EL in this guy instead. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go buy those pumps that way, right? Personally. But if you could go, like maybe on eBay, you could find some, medical grade pump. But no matter what, they're going to be really expensive.
Still expensive.
So the answer is yes, you could use those pumps. In most cases, after you do the cost evaluation on it, you're going to say that doesn't make any sense. And there are options out there like the Genesis and stuff that, is, instead of going and rigging up all your own flow switches and stuff, the thing like, fills these 1 gallon containers or something up and empties them. And I think they have good reviews.
Well, you don't, in not even Apex specific, there are auto water change systems out there that you don't need any other type of controller other than like the Auto Aqua has an auto water change system.
Oh, they do.
And they've got little tiny micro pumps that might, serve like 40 gallons or less, maybe 50 gallons or less, or some of those, depending on how long you want to do your auto water change for. But you can also swap those little pumps out with outlets that hook into that controller. Now you can upgrade your pumps, and it's all built in. Sensor with the ATO is built into that one too. So
it comes with ATO. That's like, what's it, 250?
Yeah. Does your auto water change and ATO, which you want it to, because that way it can tell the ATO to not turn on during this auto water change thing.
I don't have enough experience with it to say like I trust that thing or I don't trust it. It's just different technology. So the technology is based on measuring water levels and replacing and emptying water. Yeah. And this one is based on volume and using a trusted motor head, that does a specific volume that's calibratable. Yeah. Like I trusted that over water level sensors for sure, because we all know water level sensors get dirty and whatnot. So this is what I'd say, is if I had a smaller tank that I really wanted to do auto water changes on it, and I felt like, not everybody has the same amount of time as somebody else, so like I'm willing to risk, the water level sensors on it versus the fact that I probably won't do water changes in the summer when my family's having a great time every weekend.
Right.
In the winter, no problem, man. I got nothing to do. But in the summer, man, different. So on an inexpensive tank. An expensive tank where I need to want to invest. It's like buying different levels of insurance.
That's true.
Right? Like, do I want a deductible? Do I want full coverage or whatever you're saying? Like
the non-insured, the uninsured motorist. It's like a smorgasbord. It's a la carte. And sometimes I don't want to spend, my $1,000 deductible when I get a fender bender. I would just rather get the $200.
If you get in accidents all the time, man, get the best.
Yeah.
All right. So what else we got here? One more. I'm gonna call it a day.
All right.
Would you guys continue this series about high pH effects on coral growth? Yes,
we are.
Yes, we will, and we are. So we got 2 of them going actually right now. I'll share this one. I'll let him share the next one.
Yeah.
So the high pH one. So for those who don't know, we did a series on measuring the effects of growth on high pH. It did really, really well. Visually, man, they were all blown up versus the non-pH ones. Coloration was way better, all kinds of different things. And then they all turned orange. Like all 4 of the tanks turned orange. Couldn't figure it out.
What it was. Yeah.
Like something, I have no idea, man, what happened. It was biological. It kind of looked like, but it was just too much of a variable for me to say I want to share the results, even though internally they were really compelling. Externally, man, I want to do better for you guys. Yeah. I don't want to have weird unknowns. So we restarted the test maybe a month ago.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close to almost 2 months now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're already super compelling results. I can tell you right now that corals grow faster at high pH. There's no question. But we'll get to the results. The other one.
For pH
No,
control?
we got the one with the elevated elements that we're doing.
Oh, yeah. So we did a 2-part series already on elevated elements, and that's where we took the Red Sea Coral Pro bucket levels and then the Red Sea Blue bucket levels, and we just we're growing the same exact corals in the same conditions in 2 separate tanks at those different levels. We're talking what is it, 11.11 or 11.5 DKH, elevated calcium at 465 or somewhere around there. And then the inverse of that, more middle of the road alkalinity, 8.5 or 9.
I think it's 7.
Is it 7? As low as 7?
I don't know what they're looking at. Yeah.
But so the difference is, we initially did this and we put out the results, and that's when we've also found out that the original pH test wasn't going so well. We retested it again and we released that second episode of it. And now we put it into like a BRS tank trials type, where we actually have, rather than 2 setup tanks with just egg crate and frag rack and these levels, it looks like a real reef back there. I mean, you got live rock, you got fish in there, you know, it's like a setup you would have at your home. Yeah, the only difference is we're playing with the different element levels. And I think the last time I looked at it, we're starting to get bases on some of the SPS, which is exciting too. So.
I'll also tell you one other test we're doing while we're at it. Randy is doing the mixing up salt water. I mean, we're just measuring how long it keeps its parameters. I'm not going to give away the results other than today I walked in and I looked at them. Yeah. And some of them, they all have black bottoms, like we painted the bottoms black. Some of them are white. Yeah. Just totally covered in precipitate, and some of them are black.
So Wednesday is the 1 week mark. So Wednesday I'll find out how they parameters shifted over a week. But I can tell you, like, the first 24 hours didn't really see much.
Yeah, I mean a little bit on some, man. But like now that it's been like the Monday here, like I fully expect to see something pretty significant. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And then. Also, man, we're doing pH. We're measuring the calcium reactor media. So, like,
that's true.
You got it all the way down to like 6.1 or something.
Yeah, I've got a calcium reactor set up here on the side, and we just wanted to know what's the concentration of alkalinity at these different pHs. He thought for the longest time that 40 was the max saturation. That's the max you're going to get. I actually found that it goes up in like the 50s. So yeah, I started at like 6.2, and then just increase the pH in the calcium reactor for 24 hours. We'd let it run at 6.3. We'd let it run at 6.4, 6.5, so on. And we just watched the concentration of alkalinity go down after each pH.
I think you're going to see a big window into, like what is the max concentration at any given pH. You can start to use that with flow rates.
What can we do with it?
Yeah, we'll go and pick some flow rates too then, and like, all right, so at 5 milliliters a minute, man, it's max concentration of X. Yeah. What if we step it up to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and see kind of the inverse of how these things react to each other? Because we all know that they, have an effect on each other as you raise and lower each one. But
where is that point?
Yeah, how much of an impact? Yeah. And like I think the pH one's going to give a really good window into the concentration at any given pH. Mm-hmm. Then if we can measure the flow rate and how that interacts with those various pHs, man, we're going to be able to tune this thing in much more intelligently and
make calcium reactors unconfusing, easy for anybody to use as 2-part. That's the goal.
I mean, wouldn't that be awesome, man? Like we keep saying, you get the dosing pump, the FX FTP, more calcium, more water. Yep. And just that easy. And if that is really how simple it gets, man, they're going to be super popular coming up.
For sure.
Really change everything.
Pretty
exciting. All right, we're going to call it a day, man. We went 20 minutes over, so I'm sorry. Took up 80 minutes of your day. It's during the middle of the day, so you should tell your boss you're sorry.
I'm sorry.
You, man. You wasted all my time.
I've got to go test some salt water.
All right, man. Have a good day.
All right, take care, guys.